Hello, everyone. A very good evening to one and all. Hope you are at your best in this pandemic. I'm Srishti Vadera, and I will be your host for the session. Elevating the level of a hackathon that has a legacy of successful triumphs, we feel proud and honored to be the flag bearers of hackCBS 3.0 this year by hosting it in a digitalized way. To make the most out of this time and to help channelize the talent and energy of our beloved developer community, we are organizing a bunch of workshops and qualitative speaker sessions at hackCBS 3.0 this year. For more details about the sessions, don't forget to check out our website. We hope to make these sessions as much as knowledgeable and insightful for you all so that you are geared up to build your hack by collaboration and contribution. Thus, let's get started with our today's session. Today's session will cover how to put Postman to work consuming APIs, but more importantly, allow you to reverse engineer the existing APIs that exist beneath the surface of the web and mobile applications we use today. If the API you need doesn't already exist, we'll show you how to quickly define, mock, and document an API you can use as in your prototype or proof of concept, equipping your team with everything they will need to be successful. With that said, let me introduce you all to the speaker of this session, Ken Lane.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So here we have Ken joined us. Ken Lane is working as the chief evangelist at Postman for the past 1 year. He is also an API evangelist since a decade. Ken is also an advisor at Skylight Digital LLC for the past 3 years and has even been an API architect at F5 Networks. He is highly skilled in APIs, web applications, and technologies like REST. Additionally, Ken holds great knowledge and industrial experience in cloud computing, distributed systems, and online marketing as well. We welcome you, Ken, and look forward to your talk. The virtual stage is all yours.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate it. All right, well, let's get started. Let me share my screen and I will start off. All righty. Oops, don't want to share that. I want to present. All right, so hopefully you can see my deck now. I'm going to be, as mentioned, I'm going to be talking about consuming reverse engineering and building APIs with Postman. Quick little bit about myself. I honestly can't add much than what they added about me. That was quite an introduction. But Ken Lane, Chief Evangelist at Postman. I guess just to put it shortly, my job is to light the fire under your imagination about what's possible. So what I've been doing for the last 10 years is studying this explosion in APIs. You may have heard of APIs. If you've hacked on any projects, you may have heard about APIs and played with APIs, but it's really hard to understand how widespread APIs are. The current type of API that we use and we know began in around 1995 and 2000. But in 2000, basically everything you touch has an API behind it. Every web application, every mobile application, everything, every device that you have connected to your home that's connected to the internet has an API. So there's been this massive API explosion. And there's really three big shifts that have led to this explosion. One of them is our mobile phones in our pocket. Every one of those applications behind has an API behind it. But then there was another shift for developers from building monolith applications to what's called microservices. And this has really led to everything in all pieces of software being an API. And then the cloud, Amazon really kind of changed the conversation when they started making it so you could get storage or compute or DNS. Everything you need to build an application is available as an API, really changing how we do things in the business world. So first, I don't want to assume everybody here knows what an API is. So I really kind of want to bring things back to kind of ground zero. But don't worry, for those of you who are hardcore hackers, I'm gonna get hands on here in a little bit. So let's make sure everyone's up to speed first. So the web is made for us humans to browse. So if you go to websites, there's HTML right behind that website, but your browser takes that HTML and makes it and renders it into something that you can view and is easy for your eyes and shows images and really makes it work for humans. APIs are made for use in applications. The one of the more enterprise and older types of APIs use XML. So rather than having, it's similar to HTML, but it makes it so that data and content can be made available for use in many applications, not just a browser. And then once mobile phones came out, we started seeing JSON become the more common format for returning data and content in APIs. But again, just being used in web and mobile applications. But rather than just showing HTML, it allows that data to be rendered in any way. So Postman, which I work for, and I'll show you a little bit more here in a little bit, allows you to work with both. So Postman, think of it as a browser, but it's going to give you a lot more tools to be able to see what's going on behind the scenes. It's not going to render HTML for you like a browser does, but it's going to allow you to browse the web and browse APIs and be able to see how everything works. So how are APIs used? As I mentioned, they're used to power web applications. So now, even though there's HTML behind these, most web applications are actually making one or many API calls to actually get the data that they're needing. APIs are used to power web applications. As I said, this is what really led to the rise of APIs, is the ability to deliver the data and content we need over cellular networks to those applications that we have on our desktop of our mobile devices. And then they're being used after mobile. We discovered we can use them for mobile. We realized we can use them for just about anything, and we've been connecting all kinds of other devices, from our home to our businesses to our cars, signs. Everything is being connected to the internet these days, and APIs are powering all of it. So why should APIs matter to you? I'm definitely biased. I really believe in APIs, but I see APIs everywhere, and APIs are pretty critical to everything in your personal life, in your home, everything you're doing these days. All your entertainment, your televisions, everything is being driven by APIs. And when something is that common in your life, you should be aware of it, and you should have an understanding of how it works. It's powering everything in your job. It's what's going to give you the edge when you're working at a company, to be able to understand that APIs are behind the software that your company has already purchased, as well as helping you make decisions on what software you want to use next. So everything has APIs behind it. I'm just going to kind of go through a handful of them, of common applications. There's Microsoft Team APIs. Zoom has APIs behind it. Office 365. So every Office application you're going to use has a suite of APIs that you can get at to manipulate every aspect of how Office works. Excel, Word, all of it has APIs. Google Calendar and Gmail have APIs. Google Docs, it has APIs. Twitter is a very renowned API for automating and working with this massive social platform. Similarly, the Facebook Graph API allows you to manipulate almost everything about what works on Facebook, allowing you to manipulate and publish information to the social media platform. WordPress, if you've ever worked with a blog in a business, this is a great way to automate and save yourself time and energy. So with that said, this is a workshop and I'm an engineer. So I'm going to jump out of my slide deck here, and I'm actually going to dive into Postman, because this is what we do as hackers, right? So you should, Postman goes hand in hand with your browser. This is a desktop application. You can actually work with Postman in the browser as well. There is a browser version of it as well. You can work here, and they work hand in hand. I'm going to spend some time in the desktop application today. So I've got a fresh workspace. As soon as you open up Postman, I don't have any collections or any APIs in here, but to always get started in Postman, if you want to just understand what is possible with APIs, you can load it up here, and then you can click here on the big orange button in the top corner. And there's this little option for what's called the API network. So click on API network. And well, actually, we're going to go to templates today. Templates are a little easier. So templates are kind of little collections of APIs that let you do different things, kind of DevOps things. As you can see down here, there's API ops, business solutions. These are just little different little things you can do with APIs, where the API network is full-blown APIs like Twitter, Imager, stuff like that. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go public. We're going to type public. There we are. So here's two collections that I've created. It's a list of SOAP APIs, which if you work in enterprise organizations will be very familiar. But we're going to jump into the public REST APIs. So I can click on it here, and then you'll see a Run in Postman button. This is very common. You'll see this all over the web. Once you start looking for it, most APIs are using a Run in Postman button. And all you got to do is click on it, and it will load up in your Postman. Now I've got one collection here. I can click open, and there's a whole bunch of different APIs that I can play with here, and none of them require authentication. So they're very easy to play with. If I want to look up something for cat facts or animals, dog breeds, I can make calls to those APIs here. So let's click on dog breeds. And so you'll see this is the native Postman. It looks like a browser. I've got a tab here. I've got a URL. I've got a GET. But I've also got other verbs, other things that I can do to tweak this API request. And I can hit send on this, similar to my browser. But instead of getting HTML back, as I said, I get JSON back. And so this is a list of different dog breeds. And I can see that as JSON. And then I can see all the details of this API response. I can see the HTTP status code. I can see how long it took and how my network made the call. So if there's problems, I can see all of the details here of what happened. And this was a successful API call, so it works well. I can also save this response. So if I want this JSON for use somewhere else, I can save it locally to a file or as an example within this collection. So this gives me full control over this API request as well as this API response. So there's an API for almost anything you want to think about. There's comics, there's cryptocurrency, Game of Thrones. I've organized a lot of different ones. You can find jokes. So you can find just about anything you want to play with and think about here. There's television, trivia, anything you want to play with. There's plenty of things to play with. You want to look for a job, you can look on GitHub Jobs. So I recommend, if you're just getting started with APIs, definitely spend some time going in here. But you can find other APIs. As I showed you, you can go back to the API network. You could load the Twitter API. There's plenty of different APIs that you can get in here and start playing with to understand what's going on. If you're doing accounting, if you're doing travel, there's a lot of different APIs that are listed here for you to play with. And when these are all don't require authentication, but once you do need to authenticate with an API like Twitter or another, you can be able to mess with and add all of the authentication you're going to need to be able to make your first call here. So all of the APIs will help you figure that out. I can, give you a little example of how it works. Let's go ahead and hit the Run in Postman button for the Twitter API. So I should have a Twitter collection in here now. Here's different Twitter APIs I can make. I can look up users. I can look up tweets. They have a recent search API, so I can actually make searches. So, but once you're looking here and you look at authorization, it's going to say, "Oh, I'm inheriting from the parent," which means the authorization is here at the folder level. So if I edit this, you'll see there's a bunch of instructions on how you can use Twitter to actually use this. So if you have any questions, you can go to the docs. They have pretty much all the information you need to get started here. But you're going to have to, once you set up your Twitter account, you're going to have to put in your consumer key, secret, and access token here to be able to use this. And they've given you an environment here, right here, up top, to be able to do that. Oh, I actually already have one in there. Let's see if we can make an API call. I don't know if the bearer token is going to work, but let's give it a shot. So let's search for hacking and let's hit send and see if my bearer token, my bearer token's not good. So I'm not going to be able to make a call there, but you should be able to, when you first download this, you should be able to put your consumer key, your consumer secret, and your access token here. Now, to get that, all you got to do is go to just Google the Twitter API, and you can come here, and we're here at the developer portal, and you're able to then browse all the docs. You can come here, and you can add your different projects. And you can have different apps and different permissions. Let's see if I can find me a key and be able to use it. So I should be able to edit my settings, my authentication settings. I should be able to get keys and tokens. And let's go ahead and regenerate one. And then I'll just copy and paste this real quick, and I'm going to regenerate it after this so that no one watching this recording can actually use it. So if I want to come back and grab that token, I can put it here. I'm going to put it right here under bearer token. And let's see if that one's going to work. So hopefully this, let me check my authorization, because instead of doing OAuth 1, which requires 4 separate tokens, I'm going to do OAuth 2, which requires just a single token. Oops. All my notifications. Let's see. There we go. So I was actually able to make a Twitter call pretty quickly. So you can see how you can start using different APIs, even if they require authorization. So you'll have to fumble around the first time a little bit as you're trying to make that Twitter call, but you'll see I've got actual tweets here, and I can actually start playing with data. I can request different types of data. And as I showed here, I can look up users, play with tweets. And so that should show you, kind of 2 levels of how you can use Postman to make calls to unauthenticated public APIs or APIs that require authorization. Now, one thing I want to talk about is you can, play with all the details and see what's going on. You can see what's going on under the hood. There's headers. You don't see these in browsers unless you're using developer tools within your browser. So this really gives you a look at what's going on behind the scenes with the Twitter API. But one of the, dirty secrets of the web is APIs are behind everything, but they don't give us access to all of those APIs. So there are Twitter APIs that do not exist in the Twitter developer area. And this is pretty common with all of the platforms, is even if Facebook has an API, there are APIs that Facebook does not share with you, but they are still available behind the applications we use every day. And so if an API isn't as easy as one of these public REST APIs, or isn't as public as one of these public APIs that require authentication, like the Twitter API, Postman still lets you understand what's going on behind each of those APIs. So let's do an experiment here. I'm going to create a new collection. I'm going to call this Twitter. And I'm going to, this is used to reverse engineer Twitter as a description. So I don't need much else here. I just need this empty folder. I have 0 requests in it. And we're going to show you why in a little bit. So what I want to do, I know Twitter has APIs that work behind their website that aren't part of their API, and one of those is lists. There is no Twitter lists API, and so your lists, being able to add it and pull things from it, you cannot do through the API. You can only do through the web interface and the application. I'm not sure why they made this decision, but let's show you how to reverse engineer this website or web application. And this is something you can do with any application that you're using in your browser. If you're using it in your browser, you can reverse engineer it in this way. So in Postman, you're going to need to do this with Chrome is the easiest way. There are other ways to do it, but Chrome, Postman has an extension called Interceptor. So you just Google Postman Interceptor, and you'll see this Google Chrome extension. So yeah, you're going to need to be doing this in Chrome. I'm sure at some point we'll work on Firefox and other extensions. But right now, you can reverse engineer any web application that you can run in a Chrome browser. So I already have it installed, so I don't need to install it. It's this little guy right up here. So I got this little icon here. So what I can do now is I can go back to Twitter and I can turn this on. And this is going to start capturing requests. Now, I want to add a filter because I don't want everything. If you'll notice, once you turn it on, there's all these API calls being made behind your applications. Like, just sit here and watch for a little bit. I'm not doing anything. And I've got quite a few different applications making API calls here. So I want to actually filter that by, whatever domain I'm using. So I'm going to filter by twitter.com. And then I have to go back to my Postman. And you'll see up here in the top next to this orange button, see this little satellite dish? This, you can turn on Interceptor. So Interceptor is on, but I'm going to say right now it's just saving requests to my history, which is right up here. I'm going to actually say go into my collection, my Twitter collection. And you can see API calls being made here are actually just starting to populate. So you can look at these and you can just see these calls come in. You see Twitter just kind of pings home all the time. And they're doing lookups. They're populating all those little widgets, refreshing things. And you can reverse engineer these. So any of these requests I can now look at. I can look at the parameters. I can change the parameters. I can look at the headers that are passed and used. I can see anything, and I should be able to make a call to this. Oh, no, I can't make a call to it. Well, you're going to have to play around with cookies. So sometimes this is the harder part of getting them to work. But right here, back up at the proxy, the Interceptor tab, you can capture cookies. And you can enter a domain that you want to capture cookies for. So we're going to do it for Twitter. And that basically just whitelisted the ability for me to store cookies and capture those cookies that are coming in. So let's go back to our browser. And let's click on lists and see. I'm going to click around here on my list. Oh, bookmarks is what I wanted. I think I mentioned lists earlier. There is a lists API. I apologize. There's no bookmarks API. So I want to click around in bookmarks because this is the API that I want to reverse engineer and understand. So now that I clicked on the page, I can go back to my Postman. And sometimes it can get pretty hard to find what you're looking for, but you can see the path here, statuses, activity, lists. So usually you can filter. So I'm going to filter by bookmarks. So there was 2 separate API requests made here for pulling data from, let's look at this. So this is HTTP Twitter API v2 timeline bookmark JSON. And I don't believe, maybe they've changed, but I don't believe this is listed in the API, the public API for Twitter. And so now I've got a whole list of parameters I can adjust, I can play with, and I should be able to pull these. And there we are. So I just pulled a list of my bookmarks from the Twitter API, but this is not a public API. This is an API Twitter keeps to themselves. So I'm able to reverse engineer and understand how this works and be able to play with what is going on behind the scenes. So this should show you, one, there's lots of APIs out there that are public and you can play with. Let me remove my filter. There are lots of APIs you can play with that are public and allow you to make API calls. Whoops, this one. And then there's reverse engineering the web. So when you're building an application and there is something out there that you want to have in your application that is in another application and you can't get it out via their API, you can pull that and reverse engineer the APIs that they're using behind the web or mobile app. You can do this not just for web apps. You can do this using a proxy. If I go back to my Postman, good morning. Let me close that messaging app so I don't get more messages. And so I can reverse engineer and see any of these. Now I'm going to need to turn this off. Sorry, thought I closed those messages. Should be in demo mode. So now I can use Interceptor as my proxy, or I can use an actual other proxy. And there are ways that you can make your local computer into a proxy, run mobile applications through it, and do the same thing that I did. So I'm actually going to turn Interceptor off because, as you can see, I've got 235 requests have been made. And this is an interesting thing, once you just turn on Interceptor in your browser and leave it on during the day, it'll kind of surprise you how many API calls you make in a day. You make hundreds or thousands of API calls each day without knowing it. And so this is a great way to be able to reverse engineer and understand what's going on behind the work you're already doing. And this kind of shows how APIs are behind everything that we do. And they're fundamental to all this content. Each block of data is pulling that data and content using an individual API call. So there's many different API calls being made here, and you can also see that there's a lot of tracking going on. There's a lot of API calls being made even if I don't refresh the page. Advertising and other types of tracking. And so if you're interested in understanding how you're being surveilled, Postman Interceptor is a great way to do that and be able to see what's going on. You'll find that Postman Interceptor combined with Postman will become a pretty indispensable tool in your toolbox once you start sniffing behind what's going on and actually understanding what's going on behind your work each day. So that should show you how to pull existing APIs, whether they're public or not. I mean, I consider all APIs to be public. If they're using the web, it's a public API. But what if an API doesn't exist? What do you do if you want to make an API? So if you're a programmer and you know how to do this, great. But even if you are a programmer, there are times that you're going to want to make an API for a hack project. Like if you're building a project this weekend, if you're building something, you want to get some data and you don't want to have to spend a lot of time building APIs. So let me show you how you can use Postman to actually build an API and actually build the API for whatever your project's going to be. So I'm in my personal workspace here in Postman. I have some team workspaces. So if you're going to be working on a team, this is a great way to kind of share work and share APIs across each other. I'm in a workspace here, and I've got a handful of collections. Similar to the Twitter API, this is a products API. So say I needed a products API to show the power of my new shopping app that I'm building. So here's the API request. I can hit send. Whoops, I got to actually choose the right environment. I didn't have access to that one. So here I get a list of, this is just fake products, but that's all I need in my app. I can clean it up, make it as real as I need to. Adding IDs, product names, and descriptions, and pricing and whatnot. So here's a list of products. Now, all of this is driven from a mock server. So if I want to, define this API over here, click on the APIs tab. This is what's called a, as soon as my screen loads, this is what's called a Swagger or Open API definition. And why isn't it loading? Hazards of live coding and using the app, right? Let's try that again. See if it's going to load for me. Well, while that's loading, I will talk over here about collections. So I can define any API using a Swagger, Open API spec, if you're not familiar. Swagger used to be known, when you search for Swagger, you'll often come up with Swagger IO, which is a platform. This is the old version of the spec. Open API is the new version, but this is how the industry describes their APIs. And man, my Postman is still not loading. So this is when I'm going to go to the web to see what's going on. So let's load up Postman in the browser. Hopefully it's not my internet, because otherwise you're probably seeing. So this is demo. Let me switch teams here. Let's go here. This is, I believe, where we want to be. So I'm going to switch teams. And you can see I'm in that same browser. I'm in my personal workspace that I just showed you. I'm going to switch again to my team workspace, and hopefully we don't have any of the loading issues we had. Sometimes the web's a little faster when my local resources are strained, like I'm doing video right now. It's better to be on the web. So here I have a products API. There we are. Loads real fast. So this is an open API that describes all the details of my API. So if you don't want to code an API, you can find common Swagger or Open API specs out there, and you can use these to generate collections. So you can generate a collection for different purposes. You can generate for docs. You can generate them for mocks. You can generate them for tests. And so this is a great way to generate. I generated here for docs. I also generated a mock server. So basically, each one of these requests, let's load up my mock server. And there's my products again. But these products, all this is an example. See this example's up here? Maybe I should zoom in a bit. This looks a little small for you guys on the video. So this is an example. So if I load up this list of products example, you'll see all it is just a JSON here. So I can then edit names of my products right here. So say, I want to, call this a different product. I can save this example, and I can be making calls, and my product, my API then returns that change that I made. So I have a mocked API here that I can use because it's a URL. It's not a friendly URL. It's just a mock endpoint. But I can share this with other people. I can share this request, have it shared in a team workspace where my other team members can get at it. So this gives me the ability to rapidly create an API and have it return exactly what I need it to do without writing any code. So this allows your team members to build the different APIs. Say you need a products API, you need a user API, you need a messaging API. And this is all just for your hack demo to show this app that you're going to build on this killer mobile app. You could have 3 team members go to their own corners, build an open API for each of their APIs, generate a mock server, and then generate a second collection for documentation. So here's one for docs. And this, when you hit publish docs right here, it'll publish really nice looking documentation for your API. So each team member can go to their corners, build an API, mock it, document it, share this URL with other team members so that they can see what the API does. And then the mobile app team can rapidly build on top of these APIs. And, you know, while they're not full production APIs, they should provide all the data that you need to be able to kind of demonstrate an application pretty quickly. So this should show you pretty quickly how you can use Postman to create the API that you need and get all the details that you're going to need to make that mobile or web application or other type of application, might be Internet of Things, do what you need it to do, and be able to see, oh, I don't have my desktop agent running for that one. Why didn't that work? And the other one worked. Interesting. Didn't like, oh, my agent stopped running. I see. Switch to desktop agent. So to run in the browser, you do need a desktop agent to get around cores. But this should show you. So this, you know, per my talk title, you should be able to pull from consume existing APIs. You should be able to reverse engineer any application that's out there, and you should be able to build your own APIs and actually start mocking and understanding and building what you need to build for your application. So with that said, you know, that's my demo. Let me dive back into the deck and kind of wrap things up and open things up. All of this is possible via the Postman platform. Postman is a platform that allows you to, you know, as I said, consume APIs. It's an HTTP client. I didn't show you all the testing capabilities. You can actually write scripts. You can actually automate things. There's so much more that you can do in there with Postman. But you know, there's only so much I can do in one demo. But you can make these API calls work. You can daisy chain API calls together. You can run them in an order. You can pull data on a schedule if you need to. You know, if you get that Twitter search working and you need that to run every 30 seconds. Actually, let me show you that real quick, because I think that's an important one that I want to have as part of your toolbox. So say I go back to my my personal workspace where I had my Twitter collection. So say I want to rerun a recent search. So I did this search for query for hacking. Say I wanted this search to run. I can choose to run this here. I can say I need it to pull. So say I'm going to pull a single tweet. I can run any of these API calls I want. I can run it with any credentials from any account that I want, and I can iterate and change how many times I want this to run. And all of this should work seamlessly. You should be able to run that as a runner. You can run these as a monitor. You can, right here, you can monitor a collection. Same thing, run it using a certain environment, but you can put it on a schedule. I can run it hourly, every hour. I can run it from different cloud regions. So I can run those collections that I've built, and I can automate the pulling of data. Even these API calls that I did through the interface, I can automate those. So I think that's an important one I shouldn't have left off that I wanted to quickly just show you. So with that said, the Postman platform gives you a lot of potential as far as what you can do to consume, reverse engineer, and then build the APIs that you need to get your project done. There's a lot of tools in here. You can use the Postman desktop interface, as I said. You can use the web. We have a command line interface. We also have an API. So everything you can do through the interface, you can do through our API. So there's many different ways that you can build integrations and use the APIs we have in the network. So I recommend exploring it. There's a lot of features I did not cover. I highly recommend taking a test drive. You can head over to postman.com. It's pretty easy to get going. You don't even have to sign up for an account if you don't want. You can just download and use. But once you want a lot of the team collaboration, you're going to need to set up an account. It's free to use. All the features of Postman that I showed you are available in the free version. The only thing you're going to start having to pay for is a higher usage of those different features. So if you're wanting to collaborate and use a lot of different features, at some point you're going to have to scale up to a business or one of the other tiers. So it's easy to get. Highly recommend it. And I thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone's time. I don't know what the Q&A is going to look like, if there's any questions here, but I can stop my sharing. And I appreciate everyone having me here today. Thank you. Oh, looks like I got questions now that I'm back in the interface. How can we integrate Zoom meeting app in a web and build features to go of it? Well, you type in Zoom and Postman, and you can do this for a lot of APIs, not all APIs. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get more of them to provide run-in Postman buttons, but Zoom has a whole section on how you can authenticate with their app and infrastructure, and you can put Postman to use. They walk you through it, and then they have a bunch of collections that you can use to actually start playing with the different APIs that Zoom offers. So that's going to be your quickest way. They have several sections on Postman. So here's the run-in Postman buttons they have to create chat bots, and they have Postman for just the regular Zoom API. So head over to Zoom and you can learn more there. Let's see if I can find any other questions. Appreciate that one. So is it secure to use Twitter or big company API without asking them? Well, this is kind of I would say the gray line that exists between hacking and not hacking. So definitely be cautious, be thoughtful, think about what you're doing. If it's your credentials and your account and you have a valid account with that company, technically depends on the country you're in, it's not illegal, but it's, depending on how the platform views it, people view those are their private APIs. I don't view it that way. If they're using public DNS and they're on the web and I can reverse engineer it like that, I'll use their APIs. That's how it works. And I will defend myself. But some people will view that as hacking. Some people do not find that comforting. I go into many companies where I set up a meeting with them and they're like, hey, we want to talk about doing public APIs. And I go in and I said, well, you're already doing public APIs. You have a lot of them. And they go, what? No, we don't have. And I show them a Postman collection with all of their APIs. And they're, wow, where did you find that? How did you find that? I said, well, I used the proxy to reverse engineer, and it's a public API. I can get at it. And they had no idea that you could do that. They thought that those APIs were secure behind their mobile application. So it scares people. And so I'll admit, if it uses encryption, it's secure, but you're terminating that encryption locally, and so there are security risks if you're doing this. You need to think about what you're doing, and if you're doing it with Twitter, it's public data. It's not that big of a problem. I saw that the second question pop up there. There it is. Does Postman have support for GraphQL? Yes, it does. You can make API calls to SOAP APIs, web REST APIs, as well as GraphQL APIs. Now, I would say the functionality of GraphQL is not as robust as it is for standard REST APIs, but you can make calls, and there's a GraphQL query browser and allows you to be able to work with it. If it doesn't do something you need it, make sure and head over to our GitHub repo. You can head over to Postman Labs on GitHub, and we have a repo called Postman App Support. And this is where you can submit issues for new features that you would like to see Postman do, or you can search and see if someone's already submitted it. Hopefully that helps. Let me know. Feel free to ping me on Twitter. I'm pretty easy to find on Twitter. All you got to do is just go to Ken Lane. Here I am. Feel free to ping me if you have any questions about GraphQL or others. We're looking to kind of boost up our support there. Any other questions today? Can we share a mock API created through Postman? Yes, you can. Now, you will only get so many API calls to that mock API. So you want to be careful who you share it with. But yes, that URL is shareable to anybody. Now, you can mark it when you set it up. You can mark it as private, so it requires an API key. So you can limit who has access to it so someone doesn't accidentally discover it or reverse engineer it like I just showed you, because you will have limited calls you can make to it. So be careful with it. But yeah, you can share it. But the best way is to share it with via a public workspace, or a workspace that you can share with your team members and keep it safe. Can we use the document feature for full-fledged APIs to directly create documentation? Yes, there are plenty of companies who use our documentation as their primary API docs. It is a full production version. You can manage multiple versions of your API. It provides code samples, examples. It's ready to go for production. Use it away. Great questions, you guys. How do you live share the collections within a team? So you can share directly using a URL. You can share by publishing it as docs. You can share by sharing it to a team workspace, or you can share it by publishing a run in Postman button and publishing that anywhere on a web page. So there's 4 distinct ways that you can share collections with the teams. So if you're efficient about it and you do it within workspaces and everyone's on the same team, that's the quickest way, just in a workspace, because then they can get direct access to the collection without there being multiple copies of the collection around. So sharing via workspace is the most efficient. Just to follow up to the mock API question, can we start the API with mocking without actually creating it with code? And is this a good idea? Yeah, API first. Create APIs without writing code. You should be able to create the full API, have it 90% of the way doing everything it should do in production without writing a little bit of code. And yeah, it's the standard way. Many companies are moving towards doing this. All right. Well, I think that's time. Thank you.
Indeed, a very insightful session. Hope the audience agrees with me. Thank you, Ken, for enlightening us with your knowledge. And it was really good to seek all the information from you. It was a wonderful session and it was amazing hosting you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you so much. So I would like to thanks to our very patient audience too. Just a quick notification. We are having our next workshop tomorrow at 10 a.m. on TensorFlow.js by Jason Mays. So do set up your alarms for that workshop too. So hope to see you all there too. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Also, don't forget to fill the feedback form. It is there in the chat box to avail your certificates for this session. Thank you so much.